So let's get right into it, man. Like, why don't you tell everyone who you are, what is it that you do, and how can everyone, contact you, get in, take a look at your videos, your
Mhm.
channels, your YouTube channel, your websites, everything else.
Yeah, so I'm an audio engineer, a mixing engineer, and a recording engineer, and have been since about 1990, early 1990s, and worked in the industry for quite a long time locally. And in 2014, I started an online education website for aspiring audio engineers and specifically more home recording musicians, and that's homerecordingmadeeasy.com, where I have tutorials on everything from mixing, recording, mastering, EQ, compression, so on and so forth. Also, podcasts on that website that talks about how to start and run a studio business, because I have a lot of students that do things part-time for clients and want to run their own home studio as a business, especially nowadays with the pandemic and the lockdowns, and people are looking for other ways to make money. So I do a lot of training there as well. I have a YouTube channel, Home Recording Made Easy, that I started right around the same time, 2014. And we're up to about 600 videos at this point. And as I'm doing 2 videos a week, every week, along with live streaming and a whole bunch of stuff. So that's all Home Recording Made Easy. And that had branched off into also a second website called mixingmadeeasy.net, which is really for my students that really want to really focus in more just on mixing and really go deep in mixing. And so that's a monthly membership website that people have access to me 12 months out of the year. And we mix a new song together every single month, from start to finish in real time, no pre-recorded tutorials. It's all done live in real time. And that's a whole nother thing for just mixing. So Home Recording Made Easy and mixingmadeeasy.net are the 2 brands that kind of fold under together.
I've checked out both websites. Pretty cool. Really quickly, you said something about, individuals looking to create a home studio recording business. Let me ask you something. Do you think, now I know we're in the middle of a pandemic,
Yeah.
and even before the pandemic, a lot of producers were sort of moving away from the traditional recording studio, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a person who still I like to produce music in my home recording studio, then take it to a much larger recording studio and sort of mix my sessions on a 9000 SSL or something like that.
Sure.
Now, do you think that because we're in a digital world right now, do you think that recording studios are viable, and how difficult or not so difficult is it to start a home recording studio business?
Well, I think there always is going to be a place for the large format studio, if you will, to some degree. You're right that over the last 5 years, especially, due to the music industry and everything that's happened way back from the start of digital downloading and lower record sales and all that stuff, that's become a domino effect, which in fact then closed a lot of major studios and moved, professional producers, mixers, and stuff to the more home studio type environment. So they would drag their big 9000 SSL console that you just mentioned from a multi-million-dollar facility into a basement redone as a studio. Um,
Right.
but I still think there is a smaller, there is going to always be a market for indie artists and people that are recognized by labels and such to go to a large format studio, although it is continuing to shift to a smaller project, aka home-based type studio environment.
Right.
And I think today, that with the technology that you have today and that we have today, the access to the gear that we have today, and also in combination with the way that plugins have become so well developed these days, that
Yeah.
the line between analog and digital has gotten much, much thinner. Where 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you couldn't replicate at home something that sounded like it was done in a big studio on a SSL 9000 with a rack of 1176s and LA2A compressors.
Right.
Now you can. And this is where it comes back to, it's no longer about the gear do you have better gear than I do? Because we can both have the same quality gear at a much more reasonable price today. The difference becomes, do you know how to use the gear
Right.
better than I do? And that's really where it's at now. And that's why the education market is becoming so big, because everyone today can have access to an 1176 compressor, whether it's a hardware unit and it's a clone of a real 1176 that a million companies make today, and they do very good jobs of it, or
Mhm.
whether it's a $200 plugin. The
Right.
plugin sounds 98% to the hardware
Yeah, that's
today.
true. It's so interesting that you say that about plugins because, take for instance the tape plugin, right?
Mhm.
And I think like the evolution and the technology of the tape plugin has advanced so much. I mean, you have the wave tape plugins, you have,
Sure.
the UA tape plugins, and I mean now you can have that sound like something that's coming right off of a 2-inch tape or reel right in your studio for like, $29 or $200. It's completely amazing.
It's very, very close. Like I said, there'll be a lot of purists that would say, well, the actual tape machine, there is a slight difference. You could hear, I mean, if you put them up and you A/B them, could you, if I put 10 people in a room, can 5 of them pick out the real thing versus the plugin? Probably. But we're
Right.
talking about such a small difference. And again, we as engineers get down into the minutia of the tape machine plugin. But when you
Mhm.
listen to an entire mix, listened to by the, music listening public who are not engineers, they don't know the difference. They don't know whether it was mixed in somebody's bedroom or whether it was mixed in a multi-million dollar studio. You can get close enough to where only people like you and I and the ones that geek out over this stuff can
Right.
maybe tell there's a 5% difference with the analog stuff versus the digital stuff. But again, like I said, the lines have become so much more blurred today, that it's so much more economical to do stuff in the box. And you start to see people like, Andrew Sheps, for example, world famous engineer, he only mixes in the box today.
I've noticed that. He's just, I mean, he has all the plugins that are,
Right.
basically he built around him, and now he's doing everything in the box. You have,
And it,
just
yeah.
Isotope, just like, making a great mastering plugin as well.
Mhm.
It's a great time to be, a producer or have a recording studio.
Yeah, and so the real difference becomes not at the mixing stage, it becomes how are the tracks recorded? Because, the Andrew Sheps of the world, when they're mixing projects, they're not getting anything other than recorded tracks that are exceptional, and
Right.
that the production is exceptional and the
Mhm.
song arrangement is exceptional and the musicianship in that recording is exceptional. When
Mhm.
you have that, whether you mix on a real SSL or whether you mix on an SSL channel strip at that stage, it becomes very, very difficult to convince me that you could only do that on an analog console and make it sound the way you would expect it to sound.
Right. Now you are saying something extremely important here, right? Because you're talking about the 2-track master or the 2-track stereo that an engineer accepts to start mastering,
Mhm.
the product. And it's so important that that 2-track final stereo is done, is produced, is mixed really properly because you're going to need the headroom
Right.
to give to the mastering engineer. Now, I've noticed that, again, with the invention of all these different types of technologies that are at our fingertips, plugins, things of that nature, DAWs, I've noticed that sometimes you hear too many plugins, too much compression, no
Mhm.
headroom, and then someone is given a 2-track stereo and it's like, I can't do anything with this. The bass is like ridiculous. How do you get around that? How can we get these engineers, and again, a lot of them may not quite be there at a point where they understand headroom and things of that nature. How do we
Right.
get them to, realize that yes, the technology is there, but you have to use it extremely sparingly and understand how things work?
Well, you just said it, understand how things work. So what I specialize in is not just, my website has a ton of training courses. We focus a lot on mixing. Let's talk about mixing for a second. So I do what a lot of people do. There's lots of people out there on YouTube, especially, that teaches beginners and home recording people how to mix. And I do that as well. But what I do differently, what I specialize in, is how to use these tools in the proper and most effective way, especially when we talk about tape machines and console emulators and all these what I call analog style plugins, right? They're plugins that are emulating old pieces of gear that we see in the analog studios, or we see our favorite famous engineers, mix with on YouTube, like Chris Lord Algae or whoever else that has racks and racks of gear. And all these plugins now are made to replicate or emulate that pieces of gear. The number one problem that I hear with beginners is these tools are not magic bullets that you just drop on a track and all of a sudden the song mixes itself. If you don't know how to effectively use those plugins and understand how they're developed and how to apply them in an effective way, using all those tools will make your mix sound worse more than better. And so that's what I specialize in a lot of my training courses, is not just, well, here's how you mix and here's an EQ and it's a female R&B vocal and we're going to EQ it this way. We don't, that's nonsense, because what I'm going to do to your vocal track is going to be different than what you're going to do to my vocal track. We're two different singers. We're going to use two different sets of tools. There'll be a certain set of guidelines we might follow, but all the detail really depends on the recording. And there's a lot of variables inside of that. So I talk about concepts and conceptually, how do these plugins work? How do you use them effectively? How do you not over compress? Most beginners over compress the daylights out of everything because they watch their famous, they watch some YouTube engineer tell them that you need to compress your drums, blah, 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 with this kind of thing. And a lot of that is just misinformation, disinformation. And so if you don't understand the way a compressor works and when you apply it, how you apply it, that you can over compress and ruin a track. This is what I teach. This is what I specialize in. So I like to say, I teach you the why, not just the what and how, because these plugins and tools will do you no good if you don't know how to use them effectively.
Yeah, I'm also excited that, I'm also a DJ, and, in the DJ industry, you have this whole, DJ purist, debate. And, it's just like, I only use vinyl, 2 turntables and a mixer. And so I always say, well, I mean, why not use the technology that people are giving to us? Like they're creating this technology so we can be more creative. Let me ask you something about a plugin that I think is slightly underrated, and that is the soft tube saturation plugin. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure. Do you use that plugin?
The one with the one knob on the front?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a free plugin. Yeah.
It's a free plugin, yes.
Yeah.
And I was with a friend sent me a track, and I was like, why does it sound like this? And he was telling me the plugins he was using. I was like, oh, you're misusing this saturation plugin. That plugin is I think that plugin works really well when you add just a little bit of saturation, because if you're using Studio One, you can really use the console shaper to sort of get that saturation as well. But, they're taking this plugin thinking that, okay, you're going to create this like dirty, hip hop or dance music sound with that much saturation. And what you're doing is you're not giving the mixing engineer enough room to be creative and engineer and master your track, completely proper. You also said something that, in terms of like how people listen to music, even though we're in the studio, we're, mixing tracks, we're adding plugins, 70, 80, 90% of people are listening to music off of streaming services. So they're not going to understand, the ins and outs of what we do. Explain that to people, like how once the product is finished, how people are actually listening to music nowadays.
Right. Yeah. This is a big topic on my Mixing Made Easy inside of my private sessions with my students. One of the things that we do, and I'll answer your question, is that we do a monthly mixing contest as part of being a member. And I listen to the mixes live and I critique them live with everybody there. And one of the things, as my students have gotten better over the time working with me, one of the things that we talk a lot about is, where is the music going to be consumed? Because if you're listening to it in a well-treated room on $3,000 monitors or in $1,000 pair of headphones, it sounds amazing. The low end sounds perfect. Everything sounds bang in the way you want. But 80% of the people that listen to music listen to things on earbuds, off their iPad, off of
Right.
Spotify or iTunes.
Hmm.
So when you're mixing, especially for clients, where is the music going to be consumed? That's the
Right.
number one question I ask people, because there is a certain technique to mixing music for those types of platforms. Now,
Right.
sometimes things are going to be done on streaming services, and sometimes artists are still going to put the old conventional CD out as well.
Right.
Those could be two different types of mixes. They can be a file that goes to streaming and a file that goes to CD, depending on where it's going to be consumed. And so you have to be aware of that and know what tips and tricks you can use inside of mixing, so those mixes not only translate in your beautiful studio, but also when you listen to it on a pair of earbuds, you can hear the kick drum click, click come through. You can hear the low end of the bass guitar as much as possible on a set of earbuds, and you make sure things are balanced. And that's a mistake that's called, what I call, having the mix translate out of your environment
Hmm.
out into the real world.
Right.
Where you could put it anywhere and it should sound balanced and it should sound good in almost every system.
Yeah, that's so true. Let me ask you this, right? So for those individuals who are looking to start a home recording studio,
Hmm.
bedroom studio, it's so many choices out here in terms of the question I'm about to ask you. But is there a recommended set of monitors you would suggest to individuals looking to start something like that?
To record and mix in their home studio.
Yeah. Hmm.
Speakers, monitors are a tricky subject
It
because
really is.
they're subjective.
Hmm.
And here's what I'll say about monitors. There's lots of gear in your studio that you can get by with budget stuff, not cheap stuff, but affordable stuff for the average people, right?
Right. Hmm.
Monitors are one of those things you kind of get what you pay for. And if you're serious about producing music and recording, and especially mixing, recording you could do on almost anything, but mixing music, where you have to do critical listening and make very specific EQ and compression and balance and panning judgments and effects judgments, the more money you could put into a set of speakers in your budget, the better, because every decision you make comes out of those two speakers is what you're hearing.
Hmm.
So as far as a recommended brand, again, you don't have to spend 10,000 bucks, but I tell people, there's a big difference between a $400 pair of studio monitors and a $2,400 pair of studio monitors. There's a big, big difference.
Yeah.
And so brands that I tell people to kind of gravitate towards, Focal is one brand that I use. And they have everything from affordable to when none of us can afford it and everything in between.
Right.
Those are really, really good. Genelex are another brand that is tried and true, that's been in every major recording studio for 1,000 years. And what I tell people is, when you're building your home studio, the two things that you want to focus in on beyond the computer is your monitoring system, your speakers, and then even more importantly in that, the acoustic treatment that goes around those speakers in your room. Because those two things is what you're going to hear in your room, and what you hear is every single decision that you make when you're moving an EQ or a compressor. And if you want to know whether you have things set up right, and if you're hearing things well on a decent set of monitors, is take that mix and go put it in your car. If it doesn't sound the same, or it sounds horrible, we've all been through that. It sounds great in my room, and I take it out to the car, and the low end is so much low end, I can't fit in the car.
Right.
That means you don't have the right monitoring system and you don't have the right acoustic treatment in that room. That's what
Right.
that means more times than
Exactly.
not. So brands, Focal's really good. Genelec is really good. I've heard a lot of good things about Adams, although I've never personally used them, but I know people that do.
Mhm.
KRK I know makes some good stuff. JBL makes some good stuff. But again, I would if you don't have the budget to spend $1,000 on a pair of monitors, 500 a speaker, then before you just buy any old cheap thing, go out and spend $500 on a good set of studio monitors and mix on those. You'll get better results with those than getting a cheap pair of speakers in an untreated room.
Right. That's
You
so
know,
true. Mhm. Now, the
So,
iconic Yamaha NS10s,
oh,
do
sure. Yeah.
you? Obviously, they're not made anymore, but you still see a lot of high-end recording studios, even some larger home recording studios with the passive Yamaha NS10s. You will need an amplifier for those.
Right.
Is there anything out there today in an active sort of monitor that resembles the NS10?
I believe Chris Lord Alge has a set of speakers called the CLA 10s, or he makes I think over the last year, he has worked with a company to make, to replicate his original NS10s in a powered speaker. I want to say it's called something like the CLA 10S or something like that. And I believe they're powered. I don't believe you need an amplifier. They're active speakers, and they're supposed to be just like his NS10s.
Wow.
I want to. I don't know if it's Yamaha that does it. It may be Yamaha that actually makes the speaker, but if you Google that, you'll find it.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely look into that for
The other
sure.
speaker that I use and I recommend to my students every day, and it's affordable. They're $500 for the pair, powered, are the Avitone speakers, the little mixed cubes.
The cubes, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, those are
That
pretty awesome.
wonderful, because they
Yeah.
sound terrible, and that's the point.
That's
That's
the
the
point.
point.
You want no coloration. You want them like super flat. I remember like when Lauryn Hill made her first album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, they were saying her mix engineer was using these small cube Radio Shack monitors. Remember those like little small ones? They
Yes.
were like this small. The guy was using like 2 or 3 pairs of those to mix the album on. And obviously everything came out, really well. Now you went into we're going into monitors. I want to know what sort of gear do you have in your recording studio?
Well, to start with monitors, I use Focals. I have the Focal Solo B6s. I've been using those for like 10 years. They're my favorite monitor by far. And
Those are
again, they're
6
not,
inches?
those are, yeah, 5 3/4. Yeah, I think they're 6 inches. And then
Okay,
I
cool.
also have the pairing, the Focal, I think it's an 11-inch sub that is made for that series. I use the Avitone speakers as my secondary set of speakers. So that's my monitoring system. As far as my audio interface, I use Universal Audio Apollo X6, and all of that is being patched into a monitor controller, or a control station. I have a Heritage Audio, the RAM 2000, which allows me to hook up 3 pairs of speakers. My interface goes in. It's my main control center, I guess you can call it.
Right.
And that's the bulk of it. I mean, I have additional rack, hardware. I do hybrid mixing here, so I do have some compressors, some EQ, some hardware stuff as well. But that's the bread and butter. It's really the RAM 2000 into the Focals with the Universal Audio interface. I mean, that's the bulk of it.
Which do you have a mixing board? I thought I saw one
No.
in your okay, so you're in a
Used to.
box.
Yeah, I used to have. I mean, the only thing that comes out of the box is when I hit hardware, I'll bring it out and bring it back in.
Okay.
But I used to use a big old Studio Live
Yeah.
PreSonus Studio Live 32 with the faders.
Right.
I used that for a while, but and I liked it. It was a great mixer. I use one for playing live. They're awesome mixers, the best digital mixer on the planet, in my opinion. But I found, although I liked having the physical faders, using additional hardware with that mixer wasn't the easiest thing in the world. Not to
Right.
mention, because probably like yourself, I do a lot of these kinds of things, interviews, I do lots of training tutorials, I do a lot of things other than just mixing, and that particular board doesn't really play nice easily when to do all the things, because I have to be able to reconfigure this entire setup at the touch of a button, to go from let's do an interview together to I have to record a YouTube video to now I have to mix a client project. And I got to have things routed in a way where I can just switch very quickly. And the mixing board at that time, it just didn't do that well.
That board is so self-contained. I mean, like PreSonus does a great job with that board.
They do.
You have motorized faders. It plays nice with any and everything PreSonus. I mean, you plug that thing up, it recognizes Studio One. Everything is rocking and rolling. Now, which DAW are you using?
Studio One. I mean, I have them all, but the one that I really is my go-to is Studio One.
Now,
And it has been for a while.
when did you start using Studio One? At first version, or did you come in the
No,
third
it was
version?
version 2, I think. 2 or
Okay.
2.1. It was early on. I mean, it's got to be close to 10 years now, but yeah, version 2 is when I got into Studio One.
Wow. So uh, I think I came in at version three, but just look at where, Studio One has come from
Mm.
like version one to now. I mean, just the design, just how it looks, all the like stock plugins are redesigned. Um, I think I've been using it for about 6 to 7 years. And at that point, I was using Logic for about 10 years and also Pro Tools to just really do some editing of like tracks and wave files and things of that nature. But Studio One, I mean, I don't know. I just think that Studio One could be like that DAW out there that is just killing everything else. I mean, Pro Tools went to the whole subscription thing.
Hmm.
Logic is pretty cool. I mean, you buy it once and you get the free updates and everything. I was using Logic when it was still owned by the German company eMagic.
Oh, sure.
And
Yep.
then Apple came and bought it. But I don't know. I think like with 5 and then the new version, I mean, yes, I mean, PreSonus is just really killing it with the Studio One. What do you think about Studio One?
Well, I mean, I have all of them, and I've used all of them for what I do. And Studio One to me is probably, they've changed the game in that they have, I think, especially for somebody who's new to digital recording, the most intuitive workflow. It's probably the easiest DAW to learn from the beginning. It's always, and still is, always been the most stable DAW that I've used, and I've used them on Mac, PCs, different operating systems. I've used it all, and so I found that Studio One is always constantly evolving. Every version they put out, they really pack a ton of features into it. And they're really good about listening to the user community. A lot of the new features that get put in are from the users they have a way that you can submit your ideas for future updates and improvements, and they incorporate that stuff.
They really do.
And I know that because there was a couple of features back from version 2 to version 2.5 to version 3 that I requested for years, and they put it in. So I know that that's true. Whenever someone asks me about what DAW should I get, because I get that question twice a week from new people that come to my email list, and I have all of them. So I'm not a PreSonus artist. They don't sponsor me. I don't work for any company, and that's by design. So I can say whatever I want about all of them, and I'm not carrying the water for anybody. And I always recommend Studio One, always, because to me it's stable. It's the easiest one to learn. And more importantly, I found that the user community and the help and the resources are more plentiful with Studio One. There's more Facebook groups where people are there to help you. The
Mhm.
company's a lot more responsive when you send in support tickets. I've done that with Avid in the past, in Steinberg with Cubase, and not that those are bad products, but I mean that you can't compare the level of support in my experience. And like I said, PreSonus doesn't give me software. I bought all my stuff, so I don't owe them anything, but that's my honest opinion. And so when people say, "Oh, I'm looking to get my thing, what should I get?" I said, just get Studio One. You're gonna be better off in the long run. Now, if you're someone who works in the music industry, I have a couple of people who have gone to music school and they want to be a producer, and they're in Nashville or they're in Los Angeles, and they want to work in the music business, like the real music business,
Mhm.
and they want to get into that world. I said, well, then today, whether you like it or not, you should understand Pro Tools, because
Yeah,
that is still in the big time studios the industry standard.
that's
No
true.
matter what no matter what we may think of Pro Tools, it is. And so you should understand how to get your way through Pro Tools as well. Most of us started on Pro Tools, but
Yeah,
I would never recommend Pro Tools to an up
yeah.
and comer or to someone that was new or someone in the home recording world. Never in a million years. But that's just my personal opinion. you know.
Right. It's Pro Tools definitely has come a long way. And I also think that, just to make that recommendation, that just to add on to that recommendation, I think, just Studio One artists, $100 out the
Yeah.
box. is awesome. Now, the cool thing about PreSonus is, every single device that they sell you, you get, Studio One Artist is included.
That's right.
I mean, now that is a completely full featured DAW. There are some things you may not be able to do, like Project Page or something like that. But you still have all the the really cool stock plugins that they redesigned. And
Yep.
again, if you buy, just if you're just getting into it, maybe even if you just want to start podcasting and you need like an audio interface, you buy one of the least less expensive audio
Sure.
interfaces for like $120, $150. You're getting that DAW. So now all you need is a microphone and you're good to go.
Right.
Let me ask you a couple more PreSonus questions. So
Sure.
it just seems like, if you look at all the companies, Pro Tools has like a specific product. Logic has just Logic. Some other companies may also have, some devices as well, hardware. But it seems like PreSonus, and let me know if this is wrong or not, right? They are the only company that's sort of a full sort of product, company. They sell the DAW, they sell the devices, they have mics, drum mics, headphones,
Right.
just, mixing boards. I was talking to another PreSonus person, and he was saying that he thought that PreSonus was like the Apple of like music companies, right? And pretty interesting, which could be true. But I said to him, I said, you know what? I think that PreSonus is one thing that PreSonus is missing for me, and that's a keyboard. Where is the MIDI
Oh,
keyboard,
yeah.
right? If they had a MIDI keyboard,
Yeah.
it would be a wrap for me with PreSonus, because I have basically everything in my recording studio is PreSonus. My my monitor station, my audio interface, my monitors. I do have some KRK monitors. My DAW, everything else. And again, PreSonus as a full featured, complete company. What do you think in terms of PreSonus and all these other companies that are doing specific things?
Well, I think you've hit it right on the head that they're the only company that really makes everything
Yeah.
now. Like you said, the keyboards, you're probably right, is probably one of the only things they don't make. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 6 months we see a keyboard. I mean, it seems like that's what they do. Is
Right.
that they every 6 months they're coming out with products, and it's got like, and they don't come out with one product, they come out with five all at
And
once. I'm
David,
like,
and you know what else,
yeah,
David? The products that they're coming out with, these aren't like, bubblegum type of products. Look at the
no,
microphone we're
no,
on. We're
right,
on a
right,
PD-70 that I think is going to like smash the market. Now go ahead and
right.
finish what you were saying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They don't put out a bunch of junk.
Right.
They put out
Mhm.
quality stuff. Okay, let's take their audio interfaces. Yes, they make $129 audio box USB. Okay,
Mhm.
it's an entry level. It works. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. And
Mhm.
they make a $2,500 quantum interface.
Right.
Now, any reasonable
Exactly.
person, and they make everything in between. Any reasonable person would say, well, you're not going to get the quality of the preamp and the circuitry and the features in an audio box as you are a quantum. It's 10 times the cost for a reason.
Right.
But that's not to say, because that, and oddly enough, I know this for a fact because I talked to some of the guys there. The audio box USB is the number one selling interface they have by
Yeah.
far. It's not
Yeah.
even, there's not even a close second.
Mhm.
So it's in that interface serves a lot of people very, very well. But that's one of the things, again, I like about the company, much like they do with Studio One, they keep evolving. They also keep evolving with their everything around recording.
Yeah.
I mean, they even make PA equipment now and live mixing racks and big speakers and huge 18-inch subwoofers. I mean, they make everything. It's really amazing. And like I said, most of the products that they've have at one point or another, I've tried, and I haven't really found anything that was just garbage. It was all good stuff. It was, it was for what the price point was and what you were getting was good quality stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I recommend them to people. When people ask me what should I buy, say check out the PreSonus stuff first. And again, where I'm different than most people, maybe like yourself, is that I'm not, most of the people that you see on YouTube and stuff talking about these companies, they're sponsored by these companies. They
Right.
work for these companies. They have to say those things.
Mhm.
I don't have to say a good thing about any of their products. I don't. The only thing they've ever given me is this microphone.
Yeah.
I know I've never ever have gotten a free piece of gear or something from any of these companies, because not that they don't offer it to me. I won't accept it because I want to be able to be honest. So when you
Mhm.
ask me that question, I'm not going to say, okay, well, PreSonus sends me X amount of dollars every month, I got to say this, this, and this. No, they don't. If I tell you I like their stuff, it's because I really have used it and I really do think it's good quality stuff for the money. Or I wouldn't tell you that. I'd say, buy the Motu thing or the Universal Audio thing or whatever. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so, but yeah, I think you're right. Compared to other companies, I don't know that there's another company that has that fully featured, full circle product set of products that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because now that I think about it, every single PreSonus piece of gear I have, I've paid for, with the exception of Studio One, which is a
There you go.
software. But all of
Right.
my hardware, I paid for this microphone because I didn't want to wait for, PreSonus to send it to me, because I need this mic because I want to really check it out. Now, you were talking about the audio box audio interface. I think a really interesting, and I have this audio interface, I bought it from PreSonus, is the IO Station 24C. That is, it's basically the fader port with an audio interface. That is, I
Oh
just
yeah,
think
yeah.
that is a very interesting and awesome piece. The way I can just like move it around in my different spaces in my home. That's a very interesting sort of piece right there, piece of gear. Very interesting. Now, I'm thinking this too, because you know how PreSonus does it. They're like, hey, they're going to release something, and then 6 months later, they release a different version. So now they have this
Mhm.
2-track, is basically a fader port, a 2 and 2 out fader port with one fader. Why wouldn't they? My thing is, the next iteration of this is basically the fader port 8,
Right.
which would be, have an audio interface with it, right? That's
That's
basically
right.
how they really do things.
Yeah, it's a very intuitive product. I've never tried the product you're speaking of, but I've seen it and it's clever. I mean, it's
Yeah,
great for podcasters. It's great for, I'm just going to record a vocal and a guitar part. It's,
right,
really, really intuitive, all in one kind of a package. And you still have some of the tactile feel of the fader and the
right.
transport and some of the buttons. It's really smart.
I think that's important. That I'm old school. I'm all about the tactile. I want to feel things.
Hmm.
You had a mixing board, so you probably are in the same sort of like category as well, and that's very important that you're able to touch things and everything else. That's pretty cool. Now, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and if we were not, NAM would be coming up.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are? What's the future of NAM?
That's a good question. I think I think part of it in way will go virtual, things like this where there'll be Zoom kind of things and presentations. I will it, I don't know. Will it ever be 100% replaced? Probably not. Will there be a NAM in the future? Probably. I think it might be set up different. If anyone's been to a NAM, you go on, 10 floors of stuff and everybody, all the booths are right on top of each other,
Right.
and you better wear earplugs or you won't last the whole day there. I think that may spread out more. I think there may be limited, capacity at any one time, but I also think there is some way to do that virtually as well and still be able to showcase products in a way in real time where you can take real Q&A
Mhm.
over the internet with technology. I think there's going to be a way to do that. I think it's going to probably be a combination of the both. We'll have to see. I think at least for the next year or two, you know, and also too, in speaking with, people in the know, like at PreSonus, talking about NAM, what it costs a company like PreSonus or Gibson or any of those big companies to go to NAM, it's like $250,000 to go
It's
to NAM.
insane, isn't it? And it's like, imagine NAM, the company, just putting on the entire event. That
Right.
costs like a boatload of money. You got to like, have a certain number of hotel rooms. You got the
Crazy.
convention center. That's like a multi-million-dollar sort of endeavor. That is insane.
I
If you
think
look at
somebody's got
like,
to rethink that.
yeah, I think so too. If you really think about, if you your computer system, are you using app or PC? I mean, Apple
I
or PC?
Yeah, I use a Mac.
Okay, so I mean, I sort of like what Apple is doing with their developer conferences now. I like that a lot better than, the whole physical thing. You know,
Hmm.
they're doing a whole production of it. Now, mind you, there's no interaction there like there would
Right.
have to be at a NAM, right? But you're absolutely right. Now these companies, it's now a really great time to rethink, reimagine how NAM could happen and maybe even save some money on the edges as well.
Well, yeah, because if you could take that same $250,000 that it costs a company like PreSonus to go and reinvest that in a way where you can reach more people in
Mhm.
a more virtual way, I think you may in the long run get better bang for the buck. I know I understand people want to go to NAM, they want to put their hands on the gear, they want to move stuff, they want to get that face-to-face interaction. I get all of that. But some people also said many years ago that you could never really be a successful guitar online retailer. Because if you want to buy a guitar, what do you got to go do? You got to go put it in your hands, you got to play it.
Mhm.
Today, companies like Sweetwater and the like sell more guitars than Guitar Center does. And so I think people, if just getting used to purchasing stuff and seeing stuff online and being able to get enough of the information that they can order something and try it because they know they got a good return policy, they can always send it back.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you could get past, well, we don't have to be in person to buy a guitar anymore as much. People will buy it online, sight unseen, and try it and exchange it and do that type of thing. Why couldn't they do the same thing with pro audio gear? Do they have
Right.
to go to the booth and put their hands on the newest interface? Maybe
Right.
not. Maybe
It-
not. Maybe if you had a virtual demonstration with a live Q&A with representatives, so you're live over the internet to ask all the questions that you would ask in person, I think that might suffice. Is it exactly the same? No. Is in-person interaction always better? Some people would say it would, and I would agree. But in something like NAM, because I've been to some NAMs, and I'll tell you, it's you don't really get an opportunity to really test anything out in any real quality way.
no, you don't
You
at
can't hear
all.
anything. You can barely see anything. It's a challenge. It's more, I think NAM is more about meeting the people and seeing relationships and stuff there
Right.
of friends and colleagues than it is going to see PreSonus's new mixer. You know what I
Right.
mean?
It
For
really
but
is.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it kind of unfolds.
I think it's also a really great time. That's an excellent point because these companies, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot is going to change even when we're sort of past this, right? Because people, companies, government agencies, they're all starting to realize that, hey, we're actually saving a lot of money on our overhead, right?
Right.
So I think it's really important now for companies to say, guitar companies, companies like PreSonus, KRK, all these like audio studio, companies, DJ companies. It's just like now is actually a great time to actually start incorporating some of these video content creators to put your product out there, to try it out, to demo it,
Right.
and build that sort of online community. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen because I think there will be a portion of NAM that will be digital. I guess like coming up. You said something about Sweetwater. Got to talk to you a little bit about, Guitar Center filing Chapter 11
Yeah.
bankruptcy.
Yeah. Yeah, they've had troubles for a while.
Mhm.
They've had troubles for a while. I don't know how, again, just at everything we're talking about, I don't know how a big brick and mortar store can compete. The overhead has to be insane to run a store like that.
I mean,
Compare it
really?
to a place like Sweetwater. How do you
Mhm.
do it? Now, certainly there's going to be certain guitar centers that are just will always be there, like the ones in Los Angeles. And there's just certain ones that they're not going anywhere.
Right.
But I know in Connecticut, and you can drive from one end of the state to the other in an hour and a half. I could probably go to 10 guitar centers.
Right.
Do we need 10? You probably need two,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
So I think you'll see a consolidation probably more than a completely liquidation going out of business. But I just think today people are just accustomed to buying stuff online. Look at Amazon. How many days a week? Amazon's at my studio 3 days a week. So,
Yeah,
I just
that
think,
is so
that's
true.
just the world of today. And I mean, I purchase everything from Sweetwater. I can't tell you the last time I walked into a store and bought a piece of gear.
And you have to really appreciate the fact that, Sweetwater also, there's a bit of nostalgia there. They give you those like little packs of candy,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. But it's so weird because like Guitar Center, they went out and they have two other companies that do the same thing.
Right.
Musician's friend, and then this other one that sort of was geared towards the educational sort of side of things, but it still sold the same exact thing. I never understood that. And when you have a company like Sweetwater that's completely online, customer service is just 100% great. Those
That
guys are
that
sending you emails, calling you up. Hey, David, how
yeah.
are you doing?
That is that the Musician's Friends has been around in my view longer than Sweetwater was. Musician's Friend was one of the first that I
Mm-hmm.
remember anyway. Online catalogs that you would get in the mail and you can look through all the stuff. That was Musician's Friends back then.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think Sweetwater, why they've done so much better, is really, as you just said, the customer service, but the knowledge of the people that work there.
Yeah,
I've been buying from them for so many years, and I know what the training that those guys go through and those gals go through is, you wouldn't believe it. It's like going to college.
yeah,
These people know everything about every piece of gear that comes through there. They have to keep up with all the new stuff that comes through there, which probably seems like it never stops. And you can, it's almost like, it's like Amazon, and like you can return anything. You have a problem with anything, and I've had problems with things from Sweetwater in the past. Not with Sweetwater, but let's say the manufacturer's product.
right.
Didn't matter. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't, hey, it's 10 days out of warranty. It was, here's a prepaid label.
Yep.
Send it back. I will have the next one on your doorstep tomorrow morning, because I know you in my case, I run a business. I can't be down. I can't tell you how many times those kinds of things happen. And so I always recommend them. Again, you could buy the same piece of gear anywhere and
Yep.
but you won't get, in my mind, the same quality of customer service
That's true.
than you will at Sweetwater. You just
That's
won't.
true. A lot of my friends, we basically say the same thing that, you walk into like a Guitar Center, you need an XLR plug, you need some cables or something like that. But just the knowledge that the representatives had on site just wasn't like really up to par.
Wasn't there.
I bought a UA satellite, quad Thunderbolt satellite. A month later, it just started conking out on me. So I called my engineering representative up from Sweetwater. He was like, "We'll send you a label." And and the weird thing about that is, a lot of companies won't return. You can't return a piece of software,
That's
even
right.
though satellite is a device, there is software connected to it. Once you open it, they're like, you can't return that. He was like, we'll send you a return. He emailed me a return label like an hour later. It was done just like that.
Right. No fuss, no muss. And it's
No
because
fuss, no muss.
they have such buying power with the amount of stuff that they buy with these manufacturers that they can
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
And so they make it right. And that's, and I've been pushing Sweetwater to all my students for years and years and years. I said, and there's been a couple, as a matter of fact, I have a couple of older YouTube videos. There was once or twice in the years where Sweetwater didn't have they didn't carry a certain brand, and it was a certain piece of gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up buying it from some other retailer and had a problem. And the amount of nonsense that you had to go through was unbelievable. And I've actually documented some of that on my YouTube videos. I kind of, not to bash the company, but I would kind of call it, because again, I teach business as well, how to give good customer service, how to treat clients, and would explain the situation and said, I would never have had that experience at Sweetwater. Never.
Yeah.
Never, ever. I wouldn't even have to explain the situation. I would just have to say, this thing isn't working. And like you just said, here's a label. I'll have one on your doorstep tomorrow. No problem.
Just like Amazon, it's just like, it's not a problem. I had a really, what turned me away from Guitar Center was I bought like a, just like a studio desk from Guitar Center. And they had a sale. So it was, basically, hey, it's $100 off. But, once I put it in my cart, did the whole process, they were like, oh, and shipping is $100. So it really wasn't, it's just, it would have been
Right.
really helpful to just say that up front. Like, okay, we're
Right.
going to take $100 off, but then we're going to charge you $100 for shipping, right?
Right.
So once I did that, I was like, well, no, that was really deceptive. So I was just like, no, I mean, I already paid for it. They hadn't shipped yet. I was like, just give me my money back. They gave it back to me. And then a representative from Guitar Center called me up and he was like, well, listen, we'll give it to you, So he gave me a really great deal, took $200 off and only charged me $50 for shipping. So I was like, oh, I'm getting this, right? And so 2 months later, they were like, hey, you owe us, we sent you this desk and we want the desk and the money. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? You gave me my money back, So anyway, I had all these emails. And so basically I had the receipts and I was just like, guys, you need to like check your emails, check your, shipping company. After 2 or 3 months, they really didn't figure it out. And then a month later, they filed for bankruptcy. It just makes me think that, it just makes me think that, wow, okay, so were they sort of trying to, jimmy me out of some money because they were sort of in a situation? I don't know, but
who knows?
I think I hope they're able to get out of this whole chapter, at least it's chapter 11 reorg, right? Because I think it's okay to have competition, like that. And it's, kind of cool to, say, hey, I need a cord and just be able to go someplace and, get it. Or at least, places like Amazon can like just ship it to you overnight. So, David, I really appreciate you coming on to the Crossfadr Behind the Groove podcast. Let everyone know, again, who you are, how they can get in contact with you, all your social media contacts. Let everyone know.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate hanging out with you for a bit. Yeah, you could go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And if you go there and you, on my website, I have a free mixing course. You want a free training course, you click right on the homepage. You get it absolutely free, no charge, no commitment, no strings attached. That's Home Recording Made Easy at YouTube as well. Again, there's over 600 videos there, free content for you. And I want to give all your listeners, if I can, a special coupon. So if they decide to buy a training course on my website, if they use the coupon code YouTube25, then I'll take 25% off anything they want to purchase. So
YouTube 25.
YouTube 25, anything they want to purchase. But again, they get a free course. Just go to my website, right on the homepage, you get a free mixing course. Doesn't cost you anything. You don't need a credit card. You don't need anything. You just get it for free. And that will give you an opportunity to try out what I do and see if my teaching style works for you. Because in the education market, what I found is there's a lot of great teachers out there, but students click with certain instructors, much like you did when you went to school. You may watch one of my training courses and it may resonate with you and really help you. And some people may say, you know what, it's just not my style. I like teacher over here. That's totally fine. It's really cool. So you got to try to find the instructor that you really click with. And so this way you get a free course, you get to try it, you see what my teaching style is and all about. And if you like it, there's an enormous amount of training on the website and people can always contact me and I respond to every single email within 48 hours.
You really do too.
I really do. And a lot of websites, a lot of my people and my colleagues that are, some of them even much larger than me, much more popular than me. One of the things that, you don't hear from these people. You hear from somebody's assistant when you send an email. Right. I don't have I am the assistant. Mm-hmm. So when you send me an email, you're getting back an email from me and I answer every single one. And so if anyone has any questions, they can always contact me and I'd be glad to help them in any way I can.
That's cool. Just to add to that, when I was looking for how to actually use Studio One, all these tutorials, obviously there are like thousands of tutorials and different content creators on YouTube. But, Home Recording Made Easy, it just kind of stuck because I was just like, you just seem kind of real. Everyone else seems like they were like, selling or a sponsor for PreSonus. And I was like, you just seem kind of real. You told it how it was, you were just like, this is it. This is how things work. There are things you did not like that you, sort of presented as well. And I mean, again, your channel was the channel I went to when I was trying to find out how to use Studio One properly. So again, really appreciate that. And
Well,
again,
thank you.
you
Thank you.
know,
Yeah. I appreciate those
mm,
kind words. And yeah, the one thing I promise anyone that watches my YouTube video, I am not a sponsored person. If I get anything, I'm full disclosure up front. And again, the only people that once in a while will give me something, some plugin manufacturers will send me plugins to do reviews. And I say that up front. But they don't pay me. I've never taken a dime from any company, because my whole thing with my YouTube channel, again, because there's so much information out there, that if you're coming to me for a recommendation about something, I want you to know that I'm telling you what I really think, and I'm
yeah,
not selling you something. I don't care what you buy. If you said to me, I want to buy this, or which one would you pick? I'd say, well, I've used this one. This one I can vouch for. The other two I can't. I'm a very it's very important to me, as an online educator where there's so much information, is to be very straight and upfront. And if you're not just going to hear, like, and again, I love PreSonus stuff. I love them. I have good relationships with them. We've done a lot of work together. There's also videos on my channel that, like you said, will point out, hey, this thing in Studio One doesn't work.
right. But they still PreSonus will fix it like immediately with the next version is, or just the
They
next
do,
update.
and
Yeah.
it's never in a negative. We're bashing the companies. I don't do that. I don't bash. I don't have those kinds of videos, but it's a way to help inform. So, for example, when people were upgrading to version 5 from Studio One, I can't tell you the amount of people that emailed me and said, oh, should I upgrade? Should I upgrade? Should I upgrade?
Mhm.
The day the new version came out, I must have got 400 emails from students asking me, should I upgrade to version 5? Should I upgrade to version 5?
Right.
Does everything work with version 5? So I put out like a 4-video series on YouTube showing, here's what works well with Studio One version 5.
I
Here's
saw
things that
that.
don't work well on it.
I saw that.
And those videos were watched by PreSonus. PreSonus actually reached out to me. We worked together privately over Skype. They helped me learn some things about some of the under the hood stuff that was going on that might be causing some issues with certain plugin manufacturers. And within a week, we had it resolved. And I was able to bring a video to people to say, here's the problems we were having. Here's what we did to fix it on a Mac system, on a Mac OS. And now this is working. Let me show you. And it was really great, because it would help people not jump in the deep end, upgrade, and then have all kinds of problems and get frustrated. And then in turn, think that Studio One's not a good product, because it really had nothing to do with Studio One.
Yeah.
It had to do with the third-party plugin manufacturers. So again, you can get that kind of information with me, and I don't see any other channel that does that. And it's not to say the other channels are not good. They're wonderful. I have a lot of friends that run those channels, but I think I'm one of the few that really tell you an unbiased, here's what really I think, with no other outside influence.
I can
And
vouch
so
for that.
you can get that at my channel. So
Yeah, I can vouch for that, because you're right. There's so many channels out, great channels too. I mean,
wonderful.
I definitely watch Studio One Expert, and a whole bunch of, obviously PreSonus has, they do a great job just pushing out their own content. But again,
Yeah.
I was drawn to, like, just the content you were providing, and the other thing is, your video production is really good too. It's great to have great video production and also good audio, so you need that really good audio too. So you always had the buttery microphones, and it was just like, oh, I can listen to this guy, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot.